The next story I want to talk about is about secret societies. So I stumbled onto this article. This article came out yesterday. It was written by a guy or gal named Aline Tekmedian. Here's what it looks like. Here's the article. Aline Tekmedian from the L.A. Times, and it says that the deputies accused of being in secret societies cost L.A. County taxpayers $55 million, records show. So remember what I was talking about George Floyd, or how much it costs police to bring in some more qualified people to deal with these individuals in mental health situations. It's going to cost some money for sure, but we're already just paying money. In this particular situation, LA is. In Arizona, we paid out millions and millions of dollars when we had that lunatic, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, as our sheriff. He actually is maybe our sheriff again by some sick joke the universe is playing on us in Arizona. But it's very expensive. Bad policing is very expensive, and LA has paid out $55 million to settle claims that are brought about because sheriff deputies belong to secret societies. So here's the crux of the story. When you have these really big police agencies like the LAPD, the NYPD, the Phoenix PD, we're talking about a lot of people, thousands and tens of thousands of people are being employed in these big entities. And what ends up happening, and this article goes through it in some detail, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but we'll run through it. As these big bodies exist, you have these, they call them cliques. They call them these little cliques that just develop within the bigger entity. And they've got their own initiation policies. They've got their own requirements. They've got their own code of conduct. You have to go through a certain rite of passage in order to become a member of it. But they keep calling them cliques, and there's little things that are happening within the LAPD or the LASD. And when you start going through those different factors, like tattoos, like initiations, rites of passage, codes of silence, and all these different things, it doesn't sound like a clique to me anymore. It sounds like a gang. That's the same indicia that they use to identify gangs. So we're not talking about cliques. We're not talking about secret societies. We're not talking about little, communities of friends within the LAPD or the LASD. We're talking about actual gangs. And this article does a great job of actually fleshing that out. Who are these people? What do they do? So let's dive into it. So hats off to Aline Tekmedian from the LA Times. Here are some of the gangs. There were within the payments from the $55 million, tattooed groups that glorify an aggressive style of policing. There were 60 cases with 8 specific cliques. Now, this article, I said they're going to keep calling them cliques. They're really gangs. We've got the Vikings. We've got the Regulators. We've got the 3,000 Boys. We've got the Banditos. Have you ever heard of these people? You ever heard of these gangs? You've heard of the Crips, you've heard of the Bloods, you've heard of, those things. Have you heard of gangs within the police department, like the Vikings, the Regulators, the 3,000 Boys, the Banditos? I hadn't, but they've been around for decades. Long alleged are the violent, intimidating tactics that are similar in some ways to criminal street gangs, which is exactly right. The sheriff's department turns a blind eye, even in the face of a probe by the FBI. It all sort of originated. So this story came from, there was a situation where there were a bunch of deputies from a sort of a graduating class within the LA department, and they were at a party and they were celebrating, and an altercation took place. So what ended up happening is they got into this big brawl. There was a big fight, and the LA Board of Supervisors, they said they wanted to know how much money we've paid out over the years to settle claims that are brought, sort of as a result of these little gangs getting in tussles. And that number turned out to be a big one. It's $55 million. So here is sort of the situation that happened. There was, one deputy was knocked unconscious. They're going to continue to say that there's cliques. So Sheriff Alex Villanueva said that he put measures in place in February to prohibit them from participating in these cliques. But this isn't high school. It was my thought. This is not high school. These are not, high school girls who are being cliquey with one another and bullying each other and saying, oh, Susie said this, and Susie's dating Bobby, and Bobby is this, and blah. It's not like that. These are grown people, grown men and women in law enforcement. They go through an academy, they get certified by the training, and they become an officer, and their job is to go out there and enforce the law. Well, they're forming these own little gangs within their own police departments that many people are not even aware of. We have the Inspector General, Max Huntsman, says, yeah, that's really neat that Alex Villanueva said all that, but we're aware of no implementation whatsoever because of the obstruction of the sheriff's department. There's been a cover-up, and more than 20 deputies present during that original brawl were not required to give statements. So in other words, they're not investigating themselves. They know that all of these officers went into, one specific party. They got into a brawl, halfway investigating themselves, but they're going to, they're investigating themselves. So what level of malfeasance are they going to actually find? We'll see. The IG goes through and he says, the Inspector General, they're talking a lot more about this clique problem and these different cliques that are forming. We've got, let's see here, it says they paid out $10.1 million, went to Francisco Carrillo Jr., who has maintained his innocence, and that conviction was actually it was a wrongful conviction. That actually was overturned very, very recently. They've got these different rites of passage. So there's this group called the 3,000 Boys and the 2,000 Boys at the men's central jail, and they would actually earn their ink. So they get these tattoos that match. They would earn their ink by actually breaking bones, is what this article says. By breaking the inmates' bones is how they would sort of go through their rite of passage. The Executioners clique is another gang that runs the sheriff's office. So they're actually alleging here that one of these gangs just runs the whole department. Basically, everybody's involved in it. This group does not allow any blacks. It does not allow any women. Black and female deputies are not allowed in the clique, in the gang. There are, inking parties that they have. They're involved in illegal arrest quotas. There are threatened work slowdowns. They're sort of dictating policy. So if you know anything about criminal law and sort of the history of police departments and quotas, they're not allowed to have quotas. There used to be quotas. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So they can't go out there and say, we're going to go arrest 1,000 DUIs tonight. Or they're not supposed to, but there are these in the undercurrent of the police departments, there are these quotas that they need to hit. Like, they know what they're doing. They know when they talk through their WhatsApp or whatever they're doing, they know what they're going to be, going after that night. There's also a major blue shield that is taking place. So anybody who actually reports these things gets in trouble. Gonzalez alleges in a claim that members of the gang retaliated against him after he reported that a deputy who belonged to the Executioners assaulted a colleague, Thomas Banuelos. The deputy who attacked him warned him not to cooperate with investigators and to lie about the assault, or he would be labeled no good by the clique. So it's that blue shield, it's that blue code of conduct that we talk about all the time.